Good evening. I'm calling this meeting of the Barrington Town Council to order at 6:41. All members of the council are present with the exception of Vice President Weymouth. This brief meeting is before our regular meeting, and we really have a couple of things on the agenda. The first is an update on the Barrington Land Conservation Trust property management and initiatives. And who is going to oh, please come forward.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Peter Burke, past president of the Barrington, co-president of the Barrington Land Conservation Trust. The current president is Melissa Horn, sitting the first row to the right. And we're here to tell you a bit about Barrington Land Conservation Trust, who we are, what we do. We have found over our various events, as we put them on, that there's tends to be a lot of people in town that don't really know about Barrington Land Conservation Trust, and we wanted to make sure that the town council was not amongst that group. So we're going to make our comments very, very brief so that we'll have some time at the end to take any questions and expand on anything that you may wish. The Barrington Land Trust was formed 30 years ago for the purpose of protecting and conserving the properties that we own or manage, to protect the conservation values, habitat, etc. of those properties and open spaces, for the purpose of education, pure enjoyment, research, and recreation on some of the parcels. We have the Land Trust is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. We are governed by a board of 18 people, all from the community. We have a $20,000 approximate budget every year, which is raised solely through donations from wherever. The current president, as I say, is Melissa Horn. There are 7 standing committees, 2 of which you'll hear from tonight, the 2 that have the greatest amount of activity within the Land Trust, which would be stewardship and education. We have 80 properties that we manage, over 340 acres, all in the town of Barrington. 67 are owned by the Barrington Land Conservation Trust. 10 are conservation easements. Those are properties that we don't own but we manage for the homeowner. And 3 are owned by the town. All but 2 of those 80 properties are open to the public. We have many, many properties that have access, some limited access, some are just waterfront properties. We have several properties that have extensive trails on them. And as I say, they're all open to the public with the exception of 2. The 2 are Pickwill and where the Purple Martins are, and that is closed to the public by decree of the lady who gave us the property. It is to be kept as a preserve, nature preserve, under her wishes. And the second property that is closed to the public is Johannes Farm. It's a very big property out on Solms Road, and that property has 3 very rare plant species on it, and because of that, the state, who gave us a chunk of the money to buy the property, mandated that it would be closed to the public. Otherwise, all of our properties are open and are maintained. Victor will go into the extensive work that is done to maintain all of these properties. We have a website, blct.org. I invite you all to visit it. It tells a lot about the properties. And our properties are the ones marked in pink, or whatever this color is. And that's on the site, and our site tells about each of the properties. It also tells about upcoming events and a lot of other things. I'd invite you to visit it. I'd like to turn the meeting over now to Victor Larish, who is Chair of Stewardship and by far the most active committee that we have.
Good evening. I'm Victor Larish, as Peter says, Chairman of Stewardship. Among the properties that Peter described that the Land Trust manages, several are town-owned, as he said, including a Samoquin Nature Preserve, which we co-manage with the Garden Club, McCulloch Fields at St. Andrew's Farm, and some parcels over in Allen's Cove. All of the properties have an assigned steward who monitors the property at least 2 times a year. We have at least 30 plus stewards from the community who are actively engaged in that. Aside from town mowing of trails at Samoquin and St. Andrew's Farm, trail maintenance and management of invasive plants on those 2 properties is almost exclusively done by volunteers from the Land Trust, as well as in the case of Samoquin, the Garden Club. Volunteers have spent more than 90 hours working at Samoquin since June of 2016, and over 62 hours at St. Andrew's Farm just in the last year. And this is working 2 hours, 1 day a month. We have other properties to attend to as well, but the point of it is we spend a lot of time working on town properties. If neglected, these properties will succumb to forest succession and invasive invaders. And the ones that are fields will not be fields in 10 or 20 years, as we saw in portions of the property at McCulloch Fields. The Land Trust has created baseline documentation reporting and a management plan for McCulloch Fields at St. Andrew's Farm to guide future work on the property. Currently, with the help of a URI master's student, we have a summer intern who's working on a similar document for the Samoquin property. The cost of this has been covered by the Land Trust, so there's no expense to the town. And we will have a baseline documentation report and management plan, hopefully by sometime this fall. He and we are working with experts to get the best advice on how the property might be managed. The Land Trust has co-sponsored with Save the Bay several international coastal cleanups. In the past, they've done it at Samoquin, and in the future, we're hoping to do one along Muscatchuck Beach. These usually occur in the fall, and it's an international effort where we pick up anything we can find and count cigarette butts and you name it. And this goes into a master report that helps people that are concerned with pollution to determine what is out there. Through stewardship of our properties, we protect important bird species such as bald eagles and osprey. This spring, we erected a new osprey nesting platform in the salt marshes at Johannes Farm, and we attracted a pair of nesting osprey within just days. Partnering with Ray Marr, we maintain an important large nesting colony of purple martins on our Pickwill property. We anticipate sometime in the next year creating some man-made vernal pools on our Pickwill property for the introduction of endangered spadefoot toads. And this is a project that's sponsored by the Rhode Island Natural History Survey. We do a lot of partnering. We partner with local Boy Scout troops on Eagle Scout projects that have culminated in the creation of a trail kiosk at our Soames Wood property, trail maintenance at St. Andrew's Farm and Veterans Park, construction of bat houses on our Johannes Farm property, and rebuilding of the bird viewing platform at Samoquin, as well as others. We partner with the Barrington Christian Academy, guiding their students on field trips on our various properties, and are eager to do the same with the public schools if they were interested. Through purchase of the Vendatuli farm property, the Barrington Farm School continues to thrive. So above all, we and all of our members and volunteers value the diverse open spaces in town, be it woods, salt marsh, meadows, or beach. Our volunteers, when visiting a property for the first time, are often amazed at the stunning scenery and shocked that though they may have lived in town their whole lives, were unaware that such places existed. In closing, I'd just like to say that I think John Muir said it best. Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Pierce. I'm with the Education Committee, and I'm going to actually pass up a few flyers. So we've been working for the last couple of years on two main things, really. The first is educating people about the land trust, who we are and what we do. And the second is educating people, residents, about the land trust properties, the natural resources here in town, in the hope that they'll get out, enjoy them, and use them, and then in turn help protect them. Principal way that we do this is through a walk and talk series that we hold. And we try to hold an event almost every month, which is a lot for us as volunteers. The talk series is held here at the library. We held one on rising seas. We had Save the Bay and CRMC come and help residents see what would happen in the near future with water, storms. We've done things on birds of Rhode Island, pollinator gardens, tick prevention and disease, which sounds very dry, but was actually incredibly helpful and a great program. In terms of the walk series, those are held mainly at the properties. One of our most popular events is something we do after Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, when everyone's tired and full of food. I try to get people out to Johannes Preserve and take walks and be outside and bring their families. This last fall, we had 75 people come out in that frigid weather, which was the best attendance we've ever had. It was a great day. We do scavenger hunts during school vacation weeks. We've done them at Soames Woods and at Osamequin. This last spring break, we did a nature art walk over at Soames Woods, where families and kids gathered natural materials. They gathered stones and twigs and anything they could find, and we created these ephemeral sculptures in the woods. It was a lot of fun. And so basically we're just trying to find any way we can to get people outdoors, to the properties, learn about the properties, and enjoy them and help us protect them. That's basically what we've really been trying to do. One of the big ways we've been doing this is we're actually partnering with the library. So this Walk Talk series, most of these happen with the help of the library. They've been an amazing partner for us. They provide us with visibility, credibility, and they do all the publicity for us. And so we bring the content, and they pretty much bring everything else. Another thing that we've been doing with the library is we started a backpack series. So we bought these backpacks and filled them with maps and magnifying glasses and journals and track ID and animal ID, and they're in the children's room right now. They're in the window, and you go in and you check them out like you would a book, and you take them to the properties and you explore and discover and hopefully find things you didn't know were out there. Or you could take them in your own backyard. We're trying to get people outdoors and enjoying what's here in town. A lot of people don't know how much green space there is and what's really here, and that's really our goal, is to help people find those. So I'll turn it back over to Peter.
Well, that's it, folks. Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you about Barrington Land Trust. I forgot two things that I just want to mention very quickly. Two very important projects, and I'm sure these you have heard about. The Diamondback Terrapin Study Project, which has been going on for many, many years under the tutelage of Charlotte Sornborer. An incredible amount of effort and information is derived from that program. And the second is the Pickwill Purple Martin program, as Victor mentioned, run by Ray Marr. We have 154 nesting sites, and they're always full every year, and all but 3 or 4 fledge babies. So that's very successful as well. But again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to tell you about the trust, and I will turn it over to you folks, and you can ask questions of any of us.
So I'd like to ask about, we've just recently become landowners. We just bought some property out at Four Town Farm, and the configuration of the property may lend itself to some kind of creative swaps with trying to get part of it as farmland and maybe part of it which borders the preserved for that purpose. Is that something that the Land Conservation Trust could partner with us on? Could you help us as we sort of plan our use for that property?
If I speak from here, can you hear me?
I think that's fine.
Okay. As you may know, the Land Trust is the property manager pursuant to an agreement between the town and the trust of the Raven Refuge, the property we referenced adjacent to the George Street property. I think, subject to some discussions with the council or and or DPW or whoever, that a model similar to that probably makes sense for that property. I mean, I understand that there are various financing options that the town is looking at that may drive the use of that property one way or the other, but the Land Trust would very much like to and be willing to consult with the town as to how that property is used. As you may know, at one point, the Land Trust tried to purchase that property. The owner wanted a lot more money than we were able to pay, so we were very happy to support the town's purchase of it, and we're very happy that that's happened. So, yes, the Land Trust is very much looking forward to being involved in the town purpose.
Great. That's, I think, probably our hope is that we're able to get some grants that will help us to offset that cost and also preserve it in a way that is in keeping with that area. Some of those involve farmland, so that's something that we could envision and talk about. But because it also borders the Rain Refuge, that's something that I think we'd all like to have the trust involved in as we're planning. I also had another question, but I want to see if anyone else has questions. Okay. You mentioned the Johannes Preserve, and that's not open to the public. Is it open to the public at certain times, or are there certain portions that are open?
It was a condition of the DEM money that was given to us to purchase the property that it be closed to the public in order to preserve these endangered plants. We endeavor to open it to the public at various times, including the walk, the post-Thanksgiving walk that Cindy referenced. And in addition, if anybody wants a private tour, we can usually make that happen. There is a steward for the property who is very knowledgeable about the property, and if somebody contacts us and says, I'd really like to have a tour, we make that available. In general, we have our properties open. There are just 2 that are closed to the general public as a result of conditions put on the jurisdiction.
Thank you. Councilman.
Thank you. Has DEM been involved in most of the properties acquisitions? Like, how involved has the state been?
So our properties vary from some very small properties that were just given to the trust. When the trust was first started, they were a little less choosy about the properties they took. We now have a criteria that we apply to properties or potential gifts of properties, because not all properties are really suitable for us to take as gifts, because we do have to steward them, and that, as was explained, takes time and resources. Generally, we look for properties that are either contiguous to the ones that we have, or that have some special conservation value when someone approaches us with a potential donation. DEM has been involved in most of our large purchases, and by large purchases I mean Someone's Woods property on Washington Road, the Vegetable Farm, Johannes, and some of those predate my involvement in the trust, so I'm not exactly sure how much DEM was involved, but certainly during my time, my association with the trust, we found DEM to be a very yielding partner in terms of helping us finance and, to the extent necessary, helping us with stewardship issues. They often have expert resources that we turn to when we're making management decisions about our properties.
Thank you.
Vice President.
I read this morning in the Providence Journal that the DEM has opened up $400,000 worth of grants for open space, easements, and agricultural land. Have you given thought to that?
We have not specifically met to think about whether there's anything we're in the market for right now. We do maintain a list of properties that we would be interested in, should they become available, but those are, kind of independent variables sometimes. As we found when we tried to purchase the George Street property, oftentimes the properties we want are not available at a price that we can pay, because we can't overpay for parking. We're a 501c3, and so issues of private inurement come up, issues of what do we tell the people that we're raising money from if we're overpaying for parking. So we have to be very careful and make sure that purchases make sense, and it's not just a matter of, well, there's grant money available, what can we spend it on? So we'll take a look at it and see if those things all sort of align. But I would suggest that the town consider that money as money that might offset the Church Street purchase.
Right.
And I have been made aware that DEM is concerned about spending all that money. So my sense is that they're going to be looking to give away.
Anything?
If I could just add, as you know, McCulloch Farms at St. Andrews, McCulloch Meadows at St. Andrews Farm has been a project that we've been undertaking for the last 2 years and has been extremely successful, not only what we've done there, but also in the endowment that's been put in place. And the Barrington Land Conservation Trust, that would not have happened without their support. and what they've done for that. So the town owes them great gratitude for that, as well as all the other projects that they're doing.
I'd just like to echo that, and I'm sure on behalf of the entire board and council, what you guys do is amazing. The properties are amazing, and Barrington is well served by your activism and passion for the outdoors and getting everybody out there. So thank you.
Councilwoman Hearn speaks for all of us, that's absolutely true. And those are the kind of properties that once they're gone, they're gone. And so preserving that kind of experience that we've talked about, when people who've lived in Barrington their whole lives never knew this was here, is a really important job, and we're very grateful. If there's nothing else on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you. We'll be starting in just a moment. 08, all members of the Barrington Town Council are present. I would ask that you all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is our announcements, and I'll ask our town manager, Jim Cunha, to take us through those, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to announce that this Thursday, August 1st, the demolition of the Barrington Middle School will begin. It shouldn't take much more than a week, from what I've been told. There may be some dust kicked up, but I can assure you that all the hazardous materials, including the asbestos, has been mitigated before we've been allowed to go ahead with the mitigation. With the demolition. The concert series, summer concert series, continues. It's been very successful so far, despite the heat. There'll be one more concert this Sunday, August 4th, at Latham Park, Pat McGee Band with Ruby and Patrick McCoon. The next two concerts on August 11th and August 18th will begin at 6 p.m. at Barrington Beach. And we invite everyone to please come and attend. The attendance has been great, and the bands have been wonderful, and the weather's been beautiful. On Saturday, August 10th, starting at 10 a.m., Sydney Monstream Quas will be guiding folks on a historical bike tour, starting at Police Cove, and they'll go down the bike path and talk about some of the history of our community. So that's on Saturday the 10th at 10 a.m. Just meet there with some water and a helmet and your bike and enjoy the day. Town Hall will be closed on August 12th for Victory Day, as well as the library and DPW. On Wednesday, August 14th, we will be having our annual Family Beach Party down at Barrington Beach. That will begin at 5:30 and go till 9:30 in the evening. There'll be plenty of events and activities for the entire family. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with us. On Monday, September 2nd, is Labor Day. Once again, town offices will be closed. As you know, Barrington Middle School is nearing completion, the new middle school, and the school building committee and the school committee are very interested in getting as many of our town residents there to see this school. It's a remarkable facility, and the residents are the ones that have paid for this facility, and they'd like you to have an opportunity to tour it. So on Saturday, August 24th, from 9 to noon, they'll be conducting tours. On Monday, August 26th at 9 a.m., they will have the ribbon cutting ceremony and the dedication of the school. The governor and our congressional delegation will be in attendance for that ceremony. And then later that day, between 5 and 8 p.m., they'll once again be conducting tours before the students arrive and begin their school year, and tours will not be able to be held. Also happy to announce that on Friday, September 6th, at a time to be named later, we will be dedicating the Palmer Point Road, where the Palmer Point development is going in, and it will be designated as Coach Murgo Lane. And Coach Murgo's family will be present, and we ask anyone who knew Coach Murgo or is interested to attend. On Friday and Saturday, September 6th and 7th, starting Friday evening and ending Saturday morning, we'll be conducting our first family beach camp out at Barrington Beach. This is Councilor Breyer's initiative and being supported by the Recreation Department, and he's got quite an agenda laid out, and I'm sure any family that's interested in spending the evening on the beach would enjoy their evening there. Our next council meeting will be on Monday, September 9th, and it will be held here in the library once again with the air conditioning. And then finally, on Saturday, September 21st, the annual Fiddle and Folk Festival will be held at Haynes Park over by Cove Haven Marina, and that will go from noon to 5 p.m. And that's all I have for announcements, Council President.
Thank you. Before we get to the consent agenda, I would like to make a motion that we add something to the agenda for discussion, and that is the success of our Little League teams. We actually wanted to add that to our agenda at the last minute to add a resolution, but the Attorney General's office would not permit us to do so without more time under the Open Meetings Act. That does not prevent us from discussing it, however. So I'll make that motion. Second. Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Could you tell us a little about our Little League team?
Sure, if this is turned on. This is not my team, so I can't take credit for it. The 12 and under majors Little League team won the first state championship. They've won at that level in 44 years, with a stunning comeback victory, being down 5 runs in the 6th. And on Saturday at 9 o'clock at Sherwood Field, there will be a pep rally and send-off for the team. They're heading to Bristol, Connecticut to be in the regionals, where if they win, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2 games, they will head to Pennsylvania to compete in the Little League World Series tournament. So we had prepared a resolution. The Attorney General, like you said we can't act on it tonight. I think he might be from Cranston West. In any event, if they'll humor me, we can read it and act on it some other time and maybe get it in their hands by Saturday. But whereas Alex Anderson, James Caldarella, Cullen Crane, Mason Crane, Will DiGiacomo, Blake Dolan, Matt Beatty, Miles Fontaine, Henry Kelsey, Owen Pfeffer, Chris Primatis, Lucas Tanos, and Chase Watt earned the privilege of representing the town in the Little League 12U Majors District 2 tournament. And whereas facing elimination from the tournament, this team won 7 straight games, outscoring their opponents 45-13 to claim the District 2 title and advance to the state championship tournament. And whereas in the state championship tournament, this team won 3 straight games, outscoring their opponents 27-10. And whereas in the state championship game, this team overcame a 5-run deficit in the top of the 6th inning to claim a lead they would not relinquish, winning the state championship over a formidable opponent. And whereas through their grit, skill, and teamwork, and with the tireless support of their manager, Chris Primatis, and coaches E.J. Anderson and Frank Feedy, this team claimed Barrington's first 12U major state championship in 44 years. And whereas there are many good baseball teams, but very few that can walk so steadily forward with their backs against the wall, now therefore be it resolved with shared pride in your accomplishment and gratitude for the way in which you have represented Barrington, the Honorable Town Council of the Town of Barrington, State of Rhode Island, by virtue of the authority vested in it by the people of Barrington and on their behalf, does hereby congratulate the state championship 12U Majors All-Star team and wishes you good luck as you strive to achieve your future goals both on and off the field. So with any luck, we can somehow get together some morning for a quick meeting this week and get this in their hands by Saturday. But the president of Little League reached out to the extent any of you have time Saturday morning. We would appreciate it. Sure, we'll send them off.
Thank you. Next items on the agenda is a group of items that we call the consent agenda. All the items marked with an asterisk are considered routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, and the request is for good cause, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. So with that, is there anyone from the council who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda for discussion?
I'd like to remove the June 3rd minutes.
the Public Works report, and the correspondence from the Senior Services Advisory Board. Please.
I'd like to also remove the minutes and the correspondence as well.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, and the finance director report.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none, with the exception of the minutes of the June 3rd, the Business and Finance report, the Public Works Director report, and the correspondence section. Why don't we do it this way? With the exception of the June 3rd, the monthly department reports and the correspondence, do I hear a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so first is the June 3rd, 2019 minutes.
Let's see, it's on... it's below the announcements, down where it says Mrs. Weymouth asked to remove the town planner report to clarify information regarding Shine Harmony's request for a one-year extension of the approval of the master plan and the tax stabilization for senior residential community as former Zion campus. In parentheses, it's noted that the master plan approval is set to expire July 21st, but my actual reason for removing it was to make it clear that the tax stabilization, which was a question I asked Mr. Ursillo, that had long passed, that was no longer. Yeah. And I wanted that to be, that information to be included,
So,
along with the master plan approval, which it has already expired. Yes.
So can I add, so we, the master plan approval is set to expire July 21st, but please note that the tax stabilization had expired for all of you.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
anything else?
For me.
Councilor Bryan.
On page 5 in the DCWA section, it says Alan Pepper indicated that if households did not want to have a smart meter, they didn't need to. That's the opposite understanding I took from his comments. I didn't see him come in today, but I believe it is pretty much required that people take the smart meter.
I believe you're correct, so we may want to amend that. My memory is that he said, under those circumstances where someone doesn't want a smart meter in their home, they can install it at some other location on the property away from the home.
Yeah, in extreme circumstances.
Yes.
It sounded like a very rare thing to not have it mounted to your home. And
Because
you would still have the smart meter, it would just be in like a whole big but
Cannot opt for another type of meter, so that actually is not.
cannot opt for another type of meter.
Yeah.
That would be the easiest way.
Might say, yes.
Just what cannot opt for another type of
Yeah.
payment.
Well, it would have to say, Mr. Klepper stated that residents do have to have a smart meter installed
And cannot.
and cannot opt for another type of meter.
Okay, yep.
That's all I have.
Okay, with those two changes, do I hear a motion to adopt the June 3rd, 2019 minutes?
June 30th.
Yes.
28th.
Second.
Made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, departmental reports. Vice President Weymouth, the Public Works Director.
I noticed that there's a lot of information about trees that were trimmed, removed, inspected, chipping. But I would request also that, I know that trees were planted as well, and I would like to start to keep a record of what trees we plant, how many trees we plant.
Anything else? Okay. Councilor Breyer, you mentioned the Business and Finance Director's report.
Yes, I saw the variance in budgeted revenue is short about 13 million, and that same amount is what's short in the state aid line. And I was just wondering if those are a direct tie or just a coincidence.
The majority of that is the June collections that haven't been collected yet.
Okay, so the state aid then, if that comes in to meet what was budgeted, we'd be above budget in revenue? Okay. All right.
Anything else? With that, do I hear a motion to adopt the monthly department, or accept the monthly department reports as presented? Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And then finally, the correspondence section. I think this was Vice President Weymouth.
I'd like to draw your attention to the Senior Services Advisory Board, the letter that we received from them. I'm the liaison to the Senior Services Board, and I have listened to them struggle with the fact that the money that was slated for improvements to the senior space, which still looks to me pretty much the way it did when I was in junior high school, which was a long time ago. That I think they have legitimate concerns that they are not getting the same sort of attention that we've given to field space and youth leagues, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to explain why they've sent this letter. Not that we can do much about it, but I think we should hear from the seniors advocates on this subject.
Good evening. I'm Erin Paquette. I'm the chairperson of the Senior Services Advisory Board. I'd like to begin on behalf of the board, almost all of whom are here tonight, by reading the letter that we sent to the town council for the benefit of the rest of the people attending. Dear members of the Barrington Town Council, like many residents in Barrington, we were thrilled with the plans for the renovations to the building housing the PEC Center for Adult Enrichment, the library, and tap-in. Michelle has kept the Senior Services Advisory Board abreast of the renovation plans for the PEC Center, including showing us the original plans for the renovations. Those plans included new handicapped accessible bathrooms, renovated exercise space, new offices and front desk, a new lounge area with an electric fireplace, a janitor's closet, new dining tables and chairs, a large screen television, bookshelves, a couch and chairs, 2 new meeting rooms, and a renovated kitchen, with a new larger refrigerator, industrial dishwasher, 3-bay sink, new cabinets, and new flooring. In light of those plans for extensive renovations, the board has spent considerable time discussing how to potentially move the PEC Center operations during the renovations. However, over the past 6 to 8 months, we have been receiving consistent reports of a decrease in the available funds for the PEC Center due to the need for those funds to be diverted to renovations in other portions of the building. While we understand that there are limited funds available, and construction and renovation projects often involve unforeseen expenses, we do not feel that we can remain silent in light of the increasingly alarming cuts to the funding for renovations at the PEC Center. At the moment, it seems there may be funds available only to address the few absolutely necessary safety concerns, such as the buckling floor and a new ventilation system. But that seems to be the extent of the renovations that will be occurring, and that is provided no further cuts in funding occur. We are tasked with advocating for the often underrepresented community of senior citizens in Barrington and for the Peck Center for Adult Enrichment. In that role, we would urge the Town Council in the strongest possible terms to consider the extent to which funding for renovations at the Peck Center has been cut thus far in the project. We would also stress the critically important role the Peck Center serves in the senior community in Barrington, including providing food, transportation, social interactions, exercise, and education to hundreds of Barrington residents, as well as many non-Barrington residents. Many of the originally proposed renovations, most especially those with respect to the kitchen facilities, are needed for the Peck Center to continue to provide the high level of services necessary to serve our growing senior population. We ask that you consider these facts and preserve as much funding for renovations at the Peck Center as possible. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, the Senior Services Advisory Board. I would just also like to add, since I joined the Senior Services Advisory Board, I've been unfailingly impressed with the broad range of services that this center provides and how many people attend the center on a daily basis, and especially the dedication of its staff and Michelle, who manages it. It's really a very special place, but they are trying to do their work with facilities that are just not up to date, especially the kitchen, which is not, it isn't able to cope with the volume of service that they're trying to provide. So I hope that you'll keep our concerns in mind as it pertains to this renovation, but also if any future funding might become available. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say that we agree. We were all really disappointed to find out. The funding for this came from a single bond that included the Peck Center roof, tap-in renovations for safety reasons, and for the senior center. And we were all very excited about that. The roof ended up costing a lot more than we thought, and it was kind of crushing to see how that happened. Yet we were having leaks, so that has to become the first priority because we have to repair and replace that leak. Fortunately, because of our AAA bond rating and because of our outstanding finance director, we were able to get cheaper funding. And so we were able to use some of the money from that bond to put it back into this. That does not bring us up to where we hoped to be for this. Your concern is that there may be other cuts. That's possible, but unlikely, because we have a contingency built into the roof funding. And in fact, if all goes well, that contingency goes back into the pot as well to be used. Even if all goes well with the roof, it's still not what we had hoped for. And I know that our town manager has come up with a list of absolute must-haves and then really want-to-haves. And I would say that I personally am committed to making sure that the senior center gets those improvements. It may not be this year with that funding. So I'm sure we're all aware of how much you do for our senior community, and we're really grateful. And we just feel awful that that funding source has to go to the roof, or so much of it has. Does anyone else have?
I wanted to add to that. It's my understanding that there is a list of the definites that are included, definites that are not included, and then there's a list of, if there is money, we can maybe provide that. And I think at the very least, the members of the Senior Services Board should have access to that information.
Yeah, and if you give me just a minute, I'd like to go through some of those things, because I think many of your concerns are going to be addressed. Just to go back to the funding, we had, thanks to the $470,000 extra, we had a $2.5 million bond. We ended up with just under $3 million. The roof unexpectedly cost just under $2 million, leaving us a balance of $865,000 to do the tap-in and the senior center. The priority then became health and safety issues, a boiler with asbestos in it in the center area, the sprinkler system in the tap-in area. After that, we took the things that we felt were most essential after speaking with Michelle and with the tap-in folks and put them into the plan. So I'd just like to quickly go over what is right now currently. We have a pre-bid meeting coming up, and the bids will go out, and hoping they come back. Unfortunately, bids are coming in very, very high because business is so good for everyone, they can overbid, just like happened on the roof. But what we're intending to keep within the scope is some demolition of some systems, but what we're also going to do is we have some petitions and doors and side lights for new work. The existing floors will be replaced with luxury vinyl tiles throughout, and carpet tiles in the office and lounge. We will have a cafe and computer station. We're going to paint the walls throughout. Cafe counter is on the alternate list. We'll have a standalone electric fireplace in the lounge area. We are replacing the HVAC system as well as the emergency recovery unit, which circulates the air, which is a requirement. We're going to redo the interior LED lighting fixtures and the exit signs. We're going to make all the doors ADA operable. In the kitchen, we're going to put in the triple bay sink and the commercial dishwasher. We're going to address the fire alarm systems. We're going to remove and replace portions of the existing wet pipe sprinkler system. And we're going to make sure that there's the handicap accessible bathroom has the appropriate ADA grip bars and that type of thing. So those are the things that are built into the bid. In addition, we've added some alternates that they will kind of a menu. So if the bids come in under, we can kind of go down this list and select items that we would like to add on to that bid. So the bidders will give us prices individually for these things. That will include the reception desk. Currently, we're going to redo the reception desk that is currently there. The lounge bookshelves. We're going to, instead of doing a decorative ceiling panels, we're going to replace the ceiling without the decorative wood panels, and the janitor's closet. So, as you can tell, many of the things that we're hoping for are in the plan, and God willing, and the creek don't rise, the bids will come in and we'll be able to fulfill all of those things, or certainly most of them. So I hope that helps.
Okay. And with that, do I hear a motion to accept the correspondence as presented?
So, second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the Bristol County Water Authority monthly report. Chairman Klepper.
Good evening. Any questions anyone has on my written report?
I thought I read that that this company was not going to sell us the insert.
That is correct. And that's because they determined that if there was a flaw in a weld, that there may be other flaws in the welds, bumps in the weld, and they were afraid that this would abrade that flexible tube from Primus that we would put in there. So we submitted all the information to them. The chief engineer of that company denied the sale because of that. We are now using plastic pipe. It'll be welded together. It's fused. It has to be set up in 400-foot lengths. It comes in 40-foot sections. That's what trucks usually carry. And then it's built up in 10 groups of 10, 400-foot length. That'll be staged at the golf course in East Providence. And then it will be pulled through, ultimately. We think, as I indicated here, current plans to do this starting in October. And it may take 4 to 6 weeks to get through the process.
So the bids are for this new product, not...
That's correct. That's correct. That's disappointing. It cost more money. We thought we had a winner. And we are going to put a camera through just to double check everything anyway. But there was no arguing with the company. They decided their reputation. This would have been, I think, the longest poll that they would have on record, and they were concerned something might happen to it. It would damage their reputation. I can understand their position.
Does this solution have a reduced capacity?
It's about the same capacity ultimately. Yeah.
It's marginally less than previous?
Just barely, yes. Of course, you can always pump. You can get more. But over the years, we have seen a constant but steady decline in water usage. This is in part due to conservation efforts. It's in part due to toilets, new faucet controls, toilets. Everything that's going into modern homes uses less water, and people are more concerned about that now. But we've seen that gradually dropping continually. At some point, it's got to stop, but that's where we are right now. I think the important thing that I can share with you from here is that we're now moving ahead to prepare the legal document so that the councils can sign and the board of directors can sign, and we can ultimately plot the elimination of the hydrant fee and the pilot together and get rid of that little nuisance. Anything else I can offer you? I'm sorry to be late. I was escorting my wife for a medical procedure this afternoon, so I got behind schedule, but arrived on time. If there's anything else I can answer, or after this, don't hesitate to contact me.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Your timing is always impeccable.
You're welcome.
Next item on our agenda is public hearing. This is a hearing into the application for 2019 victualling. This is our first BYOB to Coninga Ritipa, Boss Thai Restaurant, Ritipa Corporation, 1 Wasika Avenue, Barrington, Rhode Island, 02806. This is Piapong Ritipa is the owner at 12 County Road. I am now opening the public hearing. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Kunika Ritipa. I'm the owner of the Boss Thai Restaurant, 1 Wasika Ave, next to Big Liquor Store. Okay, so we are Thai restaurant and small place. We would like to have a BYOB in my restaurant, and I know that I have to apply for the liquor license Class B. So I would like you around me to do that.
Okay. Any questions for the restaurant owner?
Prior to our enacting a BYOB license, had you already operated as a BYOB previously?
I'm sorry?
Have you already had customers bringing in their own bottles?
Yes, we had it since we was open, but it's about a month ago. Town sent me a letter that I have to stop to do it and then apply for the license first before I start to do it again. So, and then customer act, like customer, they used to do it, and then when they walk in and then they say no when we saying we don't have it anymore, then they walk out. So yeah.
Any other questions from the council? Does anyone from the audience want to be heard on this application? Okay. Seeing none, I am closing the public hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant the application for a 2019 victualling BYOB to Coninga Ritipa. The Boss Thai Restaurant, Ritipa Corporation, 1 Wasika Avenue, Barrington, Rhode Island, 02806. Owner, Piapong Ritipa, 12 County Road, Barrington, 02806.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is is the public hearing, which we have continued from our June 3rd, 2019. And this is with respect to the Barrington Comprehensive Community Plan amendments. We have the the chair of our planning board, Larry Trim, is here to answer questions if we have them. Does anyone on the council have questions? There was a note that at our last meeting, we talked about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Were those changes inserted into the amendments?
Yes. Well, this is loud. Let's stand back here. Basically, we had public comment once we were able to have a quorum at our last planning board meeting, and we had participated by a number of folks who provide some consensus. One of our residents, Dr. Frank Cummings, made a recommendation that we expand the accessibility requirements to go beyond ADA to include provisions for folks with unsteady gait, and there's a formal word for ambulatory mobility disabilities, and I think we provided a memo that provided an explanation of that. I can go into that in more detail if you want. There was large support for that, and the planning board voted unanimously to make those recommendations, make those edits.
Very grateful to Dr. Cummings for coming forward with that. Does anyone from the public want to be heard on this? Yes, please come forward, sir.
I'd like to be heard. I'm not sure you want to hear from me again. You have heard from me extensively on the December 3rd discussion that we had. I have a couple of questions. Excuse me, I'm Sandra Wyatt at 28 Byway Road. I am not sure whether this is going to be the night in which the town council votes on acceptance or not acceptance of these amendments. Good, because it's been going on for a long time. I just wasn't sure. It's been going on, and I also want to apologize for a lot of the usual faces that you see here supporting this amendment change. They're all on vacation, so I'm the one. I have nothing more to say other than just the residents of the lot 154 in question, the contaminated lot that it has been scourged and down to bare dirt, not a tree at all there, have suffered enough from years and years of that, the owners knowing that there was contaminated land there, and after having the land tested 3 times and not informing the residents, and now the beautiful sylvan, treed, quiet, restful view that they had on that street is gone. It will now possibly, and I know that, I don't know, but I am pretty certain that Bay Spring Realty will be presenting to the town again their desire to build a 10,000 square foot, 100-bed assisted living with all of the accompanying noise, sound, pollution, traffic that it will bring. That still can happen, but this is a step in which the town says they approve of this much gentler, much more attractive plan that of small houses and open land that the wildlife can still get into and travel through, and that's part of the main reason for me to be so upset that this has happened. But I hope, so I am in favor of this amendment. I think that I think that the Bay Spring residents are as well, though all of us would have preferred nothing to happen there. This is a good compromise, and so I hope that you tonight will vote to accept the planning board's recommendation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jack Cutlip, C-U-T-L-I-P, and I'm the real estate manager for Bay Spring Realty. I've been involved in this project since 2013, and as most of you know, at the present time, we are in the remediation process. Part of the reasoning for clearing the trees was the remediation process approved by DEM and CRMC required us to utilize a cap method for protecting the environment. So when you add a liner and 12 feet of material, 12 inches of material, eventually the trees will die because of the root exposure, etc. We're also required to replant some 430 trees and shrubs, which would be part of the remediation process. After that time, we then have to record what they call an ELUR, which is an environmental land use restriction, which goes on record. It delineates what the limits are of that restriction and what the activities can or cannot be on that land. So that's something that gets developed with DEM and CRMC. Just for a way of background, so I'm sure most of you don't know me and who I am, I've spent my entire career in real estate. I started off as a banker. I went to work for a national development company here in Providence, and I started my own business in 1985, all in commercial real estate. Presently, I'm working as a consultant, advisor, project manager for Bay Spring Realty and their owners. The most difficult thing that you can do as a developer of a project is to identify the program. A program is essentially what is being offered today, which consists of 8 senior cottages on the parcel at the intersection of Adams and Bay Spring. So when you develop a program, you go into the market and you see what is going to sell, whether you're building something as condominiums to sell, single-family houses, or in some cases apartments that are then rentals that then might be sold. So part of that process is to be sure, in this particular case, that you have an entity that is responsible for the land, because the ELUR, as I noted, does have requirements that it be maintained. It'll be a meadow of sorts, and ultimately the trees will grow, and that's what it will become. But it has to be maintained. If there's a washout, if there's some damage that got done, so you wouldn't encourage public to use the land for dirt bikes or things of that nature, because it would tend to, bring up the contamination. Also, I would add that the contamination on this site was not done by the ownership. The property was purchased some years ago as a business enterprise, and the real estate came along with it. We learned that there was an artificial leather company on the land, and then they would take their spoils and just dump it into what we found on the site, a cistern, which was a round stainless steel tub with holes in it, about 8 feet deep into the ground. Most of that contamination has been removed, which is considered to be the source. Additionally, we pumped out some 10,000 gallons of water that went into what they call a tank and then got disposed of properly off-site. So today I'm here to speak about how we can really work with the planning department. We try to work with the neighbors to come up with a program. But our first priority is to be sure that the remediation is done, that the ELUR is recorded on the site so that it no longer is designated a brownfield. Once we do that activity, it is no longer a brownfield, and it is then ready for development. The proposals I saw on Bay Spring and Adams Avenue call for these 8 senior cottages. In my opinion, and in my background history, I don't think these are saleable units. You're asking 8, quote, senior individuals to assume that risk of maintaining the cap. And also some of the detail, if you look at it, just doesn't make sense, doesn't resonate. There's a call for a sidewalk along Adams that goes from almost Bay Spring down to nowhere, goes to the water's edge. That sidewalk currently is lined with shrubs and grass and trees, and some of it's cut and some of it's not cut. And so the very thing that everyone has complained about, the cutting of the trees, they would get cut and then a sidewalk would go in. So we are against essentially taking away a lot of the rights that presently have on the site, and we look forward to presenting that's a little bit more workable from the owner's perspective. I have with me copies of a letter that I don't know if the council and the planning people have received it. It's dated July 3rd from our attorneys, Michael Kelly of KSRP law firm. If you haven't received that, I'm more than happy to provide you with copies. Certainly would like that submitted for the record.
You can give that to our town manager, Jim Green.
Other than that, I don't really have anything else to add to that discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Sean Solid, and I live at 31 Woodbine Avenue in Bay Spring. I'd just like to provide my support for the comprehensive plan revisions, and I'd just like to say it's been a real pleasure to be able to participate in that process over the last couple of years, and to not only obviously sort of hear the concerns of my neighbours and locals within the neighbourhood, but also the concerns of property owners and so forth who are trying to anticipate how they can maintain a lucrative investment in the area that we live. Mr. Cutlip sort of talked a little bit about his own qualifications. One of my own qualifications is that I'm a consultant designer for the Institute of Human-Centered Design, which is a non-profit organisation in the city of Boston that looks at matters pertaining to the Americans with Disabilities Act, but also the definition, a far broader definition of accessibility and the nature of how we need to begin to start to design the built environment in a way which is responsive to long-term needs. A couple of short-term pieces of information that I thought were very important from the Genworth survey at the moment is that the cost of assisted living, state median in Rhode Island at the moment, is a monthly cost of $4,350 per tenant, per resident. Nursing homes actually far exceed that sum, with $8,821 for a semi-private room in nursing facilities and $9,733 per month for a private room in nursing facilities. The reality is that the model, the typology of assisted living housing is unsustainable and will be long term. It's as unsustainable as college tuition. It won't remain that way. And one of the concerns I think we have as neighbours within the Bay Spring community is that we can't take the risk of enduring large-scale development that falls into misuse and disrepair within the timeline of its own investment. It simply can't happen. we have to make risks. We have to take risks on new development. And throughout the 2 or 3 years that we've been looking at this project, we've been reassured by the consultants that in fact there were forms of building investment that were lucrative. But I think one of the things that's important to consider, and it was Mr. Trim's comment earlier, is that when we look at things such as accessibility or environmental sustainability, we have to follow a sustainable model. The sustainable model is that we have to take risks now, and there may be upfront costs associated with beginning far longer term investment. And one thing I'd like to sort of suggest is one facet of long-term development is that we keep talking about a very specific area of the neighbourhood where we live, but with the right type of investment, everybody wins out. With good investment that ties into that neighbourhood, which is kind of holistic and cohesive and manages not only to attract people who want to live in that type of pedestrian walkable community, but also attracts the type of families that need to come there to take care of their older parents and relations, and also people that want to sort of begin to sort of raise families in the area. Property prices overall will increase, and with increased property prices, give our neighbours the opportunity to draw on capital so that they can make investments in their own properties. So the important thing about any decision about what goes on in there is we have to see it, I think, in the overall picture of how everybody can benefit from the right type of development. And that's really something which for me has been a takeaway from what we've learned from the consultants over these years. This is a holistic project. It doesn't belong just to that certain square footage area. So I wholeheartedly endorse the comprehensive plan. But one thing I would like to kind of ask us all to be very vigilant about is that we have had evidence and we have seen kind of larger scale development in the Bay Spring community in the last 5 to 10 years, which I think alerts us to some things that we do need to be a little bit more kind of careful about. With the accessibility and inclusivity of this project comes streetscape, comes planting on town property in addition to the private property itself. In some of the areas such as Woodbine Avenue and Narragansett Avenue, what we've experienced is that although there was a gesture of pedestrianisation, in some of those areas the quality of accessible streets hasn't really taken place. And at that time it may not have been a relationship with the client or the developer that allowed that to take place. But if we can really manage to create walkable, accessible and inclusive streetscapes that include trees and planting, I think that that partnership between public and private interests will again really add value to the neighbourhood and continue on its message or mission of becoming a far more diverse, far more interesting and far cooler part of the entire town than any other one that we know. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else. Oh, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Mary Roberts. I live at 11 Adams Avenue, directly across from this property we're talking about. And one of the reasons that I'm here is because in this part of our town, we already have an elder facility, Atria. We have Barrington Cove, which is for people who would like to, who are seniors who want, it's not assisted living, it's just apartments for seniors. And if you were planning a town from scratch, it seems to me you wouldn't put all of the elderly population in one part of town. It just seems very divisive to me. So one of the plans that has come forward, not to you and not to the planning board, but that's been bandied about, is this 100-bed facility for elderly people. It's a small street. It would increase the noise, the traffic, just the amount of times the rescue comes to our part of town because of the 2 buildings that are already there is, I'm not going to say it's excessive, but if you add another one, it will be. Secondly, every time I go to the town financial meetings, I hear elderly citizens, and I'm becoming one of them, say they can't afford to stay in town anymore because of the taxes and the sizes of their homes that they have to maintain. This was a nod to that population to say, well, you can still stay where we would like to develop these cottages that are easier for you to maintain and affordable for you. And having only 8 of them there reduces that number, and it creates a sense of community. And as far as sidewalks going nowhere, all sidewalks have to end somewhere. And yes, the end of Adams Avenue is a dead-end street, but it does end in a beautiful cove. So it's worth walking to, whether it's a sidewalk to nowhere or not. So we've lived on that property for 36 years, and we are totally in favor of the compromise that came out of the planning board, which was to create these cottages and make them affordable and make it as beautiful as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Weymouth, you had something.
I just wanted to make a comment that I just glanced over the developer guidance. There's no mention that these cottages are restricted to seniors. They are obviously, would meet needs of seniors, especially those who want to downsize, but they're really made to, it says, meet the needs of all segments of the population, especially the senior population, single-person households, and young adults who are starting out. So I think that should open up the availability of new people to, not just seniors, to move in there, which is the point of the cottage structure.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And are we ready to entertain a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the amendments to the Barrington Comprehensive Plan as presented.
I hear a motion. Is there a second? Second. Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one recusal. The motion carries. Thank you. And thank you for your patience and your hard work over the Okay, the next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on interviews and appointments. I don't believe I believe Mr. Stafford was planning to attend. Mr. Stafford, please come forward. This is for a vacancy of first alternate on the Board of Assessment Review. Thank you for coming in tonight. Could you tell us a little about yourself and what you hope to bring to the Board of Assessment Review?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk to you tonight. I'm a new resident of Barrington, and I was actually at the financial town meeting sitting next to the town planner, and we were talking about some of the real estate trends in town. I realized that I'm actually pretty well qualified, spending the last 2 years really studying the real estate market for Barrington and the East Bay. My background's in information technology. I run cloud data analytics for Raytheon in New England. I think it kind of gives me a different perspective in terms of data and how we do that. It's not a traditional, function, certainly of the thing, but I think when we look at revaluations and things like that, which being in Bristol previously, we had a very controversial revaluation that ended up being torn up at considerable expense and then was redone last year. Certainly, I think analytics and data could have caught that before it got hundreds of citizens worked up and throwing away a lot of money. So looking at it, area I know something about, having had done transactions both in Rhode Island and some experience in North Carolina. But it's ultimately it's about citizens of the town having an opportunity to get their concerns heard and evaluated. And I'm sure that the town council could do it, but your agenda is pretty darn full. And whether a basement's very good or very good plus is something that I think you've outsourced to a good group and a group that I'd like to join and help the town with.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Great, thank you.
Could I point out that Mr. Stafford is a Navy veteran, and despite being a submariner, I think he's eminently qualified.
We have a little prejudice here. We also have another applicant, and that is Ronnie Phipps. Ronnie is not able to attend.
May I say something?
Sure.
I'm a little uncomfortable. I mean, there are 2 vacancies on the planning board, and neither of the people who have applied are able to attend. And whereas I'm sure Mr. Stafford is eminently qualified, I'm a little uncomfortable appointing people when there were others who wished to apply and weren't able to be interviewed in the summer during vacation time. I don't know if I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but it's the same case for the Resilience and Energy Committee. In the past, what we've done, there's one person who may be here to interview. There's another person unable to attend. I know in the past we've interviewed the people who are able to attend and open it up to the next meeting to give the others the ability to be interviewed. So we would, in the past, we've continued advertising those openings, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
So what is the sense of the council in terms of allowing, in this particular instance, Ronnie Phipps, and then in the case of the Resilience and Energy Committee, Magnus Thorson, to attend? Do we want to make a decision tonight about this particular one, or should we postpone a decision until our next meeting?
Is the assessment board review meeting now?
Mike is saying now. They meet as necessary. They can't not meet.
Okay,
So a couple of months.
Pardon?
A couple of months until they meet.
Okay. So we have time to.
And this is an alternate position, so.
Okay. I know that Ronnie, that was not her first choice, but at the same time, it's clear that she wants to become involved. And I don't know.
I tend to think that part of the structure of our community is based on these committees, and we've got to kind of keep them going fully. And I think if we kind of just continue to wait for somebody to kind of get it on their schedule, especially, I mean, her name appears on a number of board options, whereas he is here and willing to maybe then get that board, I'm assuming, up to capacity and nominating alternates on that board.
There's only one, there's a first, I think, are there two alternates? Just one, so.
So that would make a complete board or committee.
Well, it's already complete, it's just a question of someone's absent,
Yeah.
so.
So
So we have sort of one for voting tonight and one for waiting.
My gut tells me on this one, there's not a reason to wait. Ms. Phipps has applied for planning and housing and indicated that planning was actually the first choice. There were 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. So, and neither of them were here, so I would think we're not going to make an appointment on planning. But Mr. Stafford seems eminently qualified, and we extend Ms. Phipps can be here next time around for openings for which she's applying.
Okay. So I tend to agree that generally if we didn't have anyone here, we should postpone it, not look at it, not look on just the resumes. But I will, in that case, does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to appoint John Stafford to the Board of Assessment Review in the first alternate position.
Motion's been made. For a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
What can I do? What's the alternative? Abstain. Abstain.
The motion carries with one abstention. Thank you very much. Appreciate your willingness to serve us in our town. So the next item is the Housing Board of Trustees, and we have 5 vacancies on that. And again,
two full vacancies, and she's interested in it, appointing her now. Voting to appoint her now isn't going to prevent another person from applying before our next meeting. There would be 1 full vacancy and 3 alternates.
that's true, and I guess the only concern I have is usually we interview, allow anyone who wants to ask questions, but there's no...
I think that is setting, I mean, I realize that most of us here know who this particular person, but if it were, you know, Joe Schmo who just signs on, doesn't necessarily mean that they would be, I think it's setting a dangerous precedent. If we're just going to, sure, if you want to be on the housing board, sure.
My feeling is that if anyone wants a chance to interview, then they want to have that opportunity, and I would support that. Does anyone object and want to vote without an interview?
I think for the committees where no one is able to attend an interview, I wouldn't want to be consistent on that.
Okay. So unless there is an objection, we will
skip to resilience.
Why don't we, I'll make a motion to continue the interviews and appointments on the Housing Board of Trustees and on the Planning Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's continued. Next one is Resilience and Energy. There are 2 vacancies, one full member and one first alternate. Mr. Thorson is unable to attend, but Mr. Beal is here. Please come forward, sir. Thank you for coming in, and maybe you can tell us a little about yourself and what you hope to bring to Resilience and Energy.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is David Beal. I just moved into 17 Oak Manor Drive. We moved about a month ago. The Energy and Resilience Committee, it fits my skill sets. I'm a mechanical engineer. I have my PhD. And it also fits my interests, which is, you know, both energy. My mother was on the environmental board in my town growing up in New York. And then in resilience, I mean, the first thing I did when I was looking at Barrington properties, you have a great website with all the flood maps of the historic floods and flood zones. I studied that fairly thoroughly. So I feel like this fits my interests as well as my skill set better than any other boards do, certainly. I've worked at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center for 16 years. So I've lived locally in Providence. We moved recently. I have 2 boys that are going to be going into your school soon.
Great.
Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? No? You're coming at a very exciting time. We just last year changed the name from Energy to Resilience and Energy. I think we may have been the first to have a dedicated dedicated committee to that in the state. We met with the Chief Resiliency Officer for the state, and I think he told us that. We have also just hired a Chief Resiliency Officer, so we're just starting with this, and we've got a long way to go. We got to get there quickly.
Right. So, I mean, certainly it's going to be an issue for a lot of Rhode Island communities.
Yes.
For flooding in particular. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
And we'll be voting in just a moment. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint David Beal to the Resilience and Energy Committee as a full member on an expired term, and an expired term end date of November 30, 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain, just on principle. I welcome both of you to your boards. I think you're going to be a great asset, but I do feel as though I have to follow through with my original concern, so.
Thank you very much. I am the liaison to that. It's a good committee, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This agenda item is for members of the public to speak regarding a topic that's not already on the agenda. If you want to speak, please indicate that you would like to speak by raising your hand. When you're recognized, please approach, state your name and address for the record. Please, come forward.
I'm Ann Strong, 55 Teat Avenue. I wanted to comment on the recent registration to vote of Laura Olton, who was the PUC candidate. She registered at her cousin, Ronnie Phipps' house, who has been a topic of conversation tonight, interestingly. I, as a resident and someone who formerly held elective office, I'm concerned that we're registering people that had no business registering to vote in Barrington. And I would like to see this on as an agenda item for discussion. And I really would like to know how this happened, what the process was, and how it was determined that Ms. Olton could register here in Barrington, because it's deeply concerning. You know, every vote, you know, is important, and voter fraud is a concern. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jeff Grove, 16 Robbins Drive. I would also like to suggest that Mrs. Phipps should not be considered for the positions that you are discussing because of her involvement with what could potentially be and looks like voter fraud. Her cousin declared herself to be a Rhode Island resident, was that, and registered to vote in Barrington, perhaps because she fooled someone at the town. Perhaps this was a favor to the governor. I don't know exactly how this happened, but I think it's extremely concerning. Her cousin Ronnie Phipps was front and center involved in this, and this is something that should not be blown over. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on a composting initiative. This is something that we've been talking about for some time. We've had some ideas about this. Composting is something that a lot of individuals do, and there are some communities that do it. One of the great advantages for our community, if our citizens were to compost, is that that would lower the tonnage of waste going to the central landfill. Last month, we had about 500 tons of garbage go to the central landfill. If we could pull out some of that food and have that composted, that could save us money. And it's also good for the environment. So that's something I would love to see. I spoke with Councilor Breyer about this, and we're both interested in it. However, there's already a committee that is working on this, and it is Vice President Weymouth's liaison committee, and maybe you could tell us a little about what they're doing.
The Conservation Commission has begun to look into our recycling policies and capabilities, as well as the possibility of composting. And back in October, Leo Pollock from the compost plant came and spoke with them about whether or not there could be household pickups of compost, as they do in, I know that Portland, Oregon, every household has a bucket and it's picked up with the trash. But I can also tell you that the next towns over do not have that policy. And it was explained to us that at this time, because of their resources, I believe, it was, and because the state is behind on this issue, I would say, that to do household pickups, individual household pickups, was, at this point, couldn't be done. But that they were interested in the possibility of supplying bins at the recycling center, where people could bring food scraps and they would pick up from there on a weekly basis, I believe, as well as picking up from the schools. That was as far as we got. I do know that Bristol Conservation Commission is a very active one, and that they have been in communication with at least Dave McLaughlin from Clean Ocean Access about composting. I don't know if Warren has expressed interest, but I think our Conservation Commission is interested in looking into maybe, seeing what neighboring towns might be up for. And although I do know that the farm school apparently does composting. Somebody from the farm school came to the Conservation Commission, and they were asking at the last meeting, they were asking about, or suggesting that there was going to be composting through the schools. And a member of the Conservation Commission mentioned that it might not be a doable thing because of meat and bones and being, they really need, I guess, a hot compost facility, and I think there may be one in Rhode Island, I'm not sure. I think there are at least two people in the audience who know more about this than I do, but I can tell you that our Conservation Commission is actively beginning to look into composting town-wide, but that's all I can say.
One of the things that I think, at the very least, that I'd love to see explored is a solarized type program. So with solarized, the town did not buy solar panels. We negotiated through a state program, but there's no reason we couldn't negotiate through a town program, that citizens could buy panels. In this case, could buy compost bins, those barrels or whatever, and the number of citizens that come through could reduce the cost for all the citizens. That's the way it worked with the solar panels. If you reached one tier, everybody gets a break. If you reach the next tier, everybody gets a larger break on the cost, and then if you reach the final tier, everyone gets the largest break on the cost. We could do something like that simply by publicizing it and negotiating. That's something I'd like to see, but because we have Open Meetings Act, this is an open meeting, we can talk about it, but because we do, we can't have three of us working on an initiative. So I will step back because I know Councilor Breyer is interested in this.
Okay. When you were talking about the possibility of picking up at schools, who was the they you were referring to?
The compost plant.
Because
people who are part of this business, Neopoly. That's the name that I...
The farm school's already picking up all 6 schools? All 6 schools, as well as one other location? Or was it just the 6 schools?
Can somebody come up and speak to the... Please?
Good evening. I'm Tim Faulkner from 12 Sandals Head Avenue and Kelvin Mazursky from 221 Promenade. So we have been managing a district-wide composting program for probably 10 years now, and all 4 elementary schools have in-cafeteria compost collection, food scrap collection, and we've done some on-site composting at some of the schools and tried to incorporate it in some educational lessons with the students. And we also have a couple off-site composting bins. One of them's at the farm school, which also includes a public drop-off, so people can bring their food scraps from home as well. And we compost it there, and then also incorporate that into some educational things that we run at the farm, and also offer compost for people to finish compost. And so I think one of the distinctions maybe from what you're talking about is like a full-scale compost collection program. We only take fruits and vegetables, coffee grounds and eggshells, a little bit of paper products. And that's most, I think, of the food waste that they get in the cafeterias anyway at the schools. And in the high school, and in the middle school, we collect the food scrap from the kitchens there. So they give us their vegetables and they have bins outside the kitchens, and we collect that as well and compost that. And so yeah, if you want to kind of do the full scale, all compostable, all food, all, meats and dairy products as well, you do need a large scale facility, which I don't know that we have the capacity for necessarily at that point. Then there is the Earth Care Farm down in Charleston, which has, I think, the state's kind of the only large scale commercial big enough composting facility to do all that food waste. I think that's where Leo brings a lot of his compost. You might know more about that, but I know there's been talk of some other facilities that they're trying to open at other parts of the state. So that's kind of held up a lot of the broader expansion commercially and residentially. It's just there's not a lot of locations to do the full-scale composting.
Is that what's called hot composting?
Well, Kellen's a certified compost.
Compost.
You can answer that.
Are you referring to all organics, the meats and the bones and everything?
Yes, I think I am.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's where you want to get the hot composting. So that's going to be bulk, more than likely windrows, where you're constantly tending to it, which is what I mentioned at the last meeting. We currently have that infrastructure in place currently in town at Walker Farm. So I'm hoping that the Conservation Commission, with Mr. Pollack from the compost plant, have considered that as an option in considering residential pickup, to use that facility and manage it in almost the same way that they're managing it right now. Well, they'll have the guy from DWP. I have my plot at Walker Farm at the garden there, and I'll see him, he comes almost on a daily basis to turn the windrows. With that activity, I think that we have an opportunity, if it has not been explored, to look at that facility to incorporate more diversity into our organics. So like Mr. Faulkner was saying, at this point in the schools, we're focusing primarily on your vegetable scraps. So we're leaving out the bread, we're leaving out the meats and the spectrum of organics. And I think that I would love to hear what the Conservation Commission is looking at and the research that they're considering. Because that would be, like you said, it's an opportunity. We have an opportunity to really, as a community, save money. And, you look in the paper at just our recyclables from, how many tainted loads were refused, But that's another issue altogether. But yeah, we can do a better job, and I think that we can save money. So I'm hoping that they're looking at many aspects of composting and opportunities right within our town here.
I think it actually works the other way around. I think you need to come to the Conservation Commission and make these suggestions, because they're the only person that has spoken to them at this point is Leo Pollack. And as they are searching for composting ideas, it sounds to me like you're full of them. And I would love to have you put on the next agenda, conservation agenda.
Yeah, I did plan on attending one of their meetings, and I just never made it. Apology.
Well, if you're on the agenda.
Oh, yeah. Put his name down, he'll be there. Definitely.
You haven't lived until you've had your own twisted by Katie, so.
Yeah, that's right. Happy to show up. Help out.
And the composting that you do through the schools, are you actually composting at the schools?
Some of the schools we are. Kelvin and his son built a nice bin system, and your two daughters, at Hampton Meadows. So we do some composting there. And the rest is done at the farm. And I think we had they carved out a little space for us, the DPW did at Walker Farm, in like a wooden bin. But I don't think we're using that as much. It's mostly happening at the farm in Hampton Meadows. And then we had some bins going at Soames for a little bit, but I think it's better. A lot of it depends on the location at the school where you can put it, keep it away from nuisances, and so Hampton Meadows has worked out the best.
What is your dream for the town and composting? What would you like to see?
Well, I don't see why we're not focusing on residential and commercial organic reclamation and diversion. And
That involves a pickup.
that would involve a pickup
And that's
or...
where the money, will be.
Right, we're all volunteers, so I think once you
Yeah.
go for curbside pickup, then there has to be some sort of contract, I guess, that you
Right.
have with a collector. It's like waste hauling, and who knows where. Hopefully you have a place local you can bring it to, or
Right.
another opportunity.
Which is what Leo Pollock sort of said at this juncture wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think-
I don't believe there's any town in Rhode Island that is collecting household.
No, I don't think there are any. I think there's some drop-offs in Providence, and other communities. I think in Newport, maybe Newport has some. Well, there are. I think does Newport have where you can pay for it if you do it, outside of the town? You can have your own collection. I think some towns have that.
I know that.
Oh, that's right. There's
Ron
the
Park is
bootstrap
chair.
or somebody.
I don't know the name of it, but he's the chair of our Resilience and Energy, and he pays for it.
Okay.
And I think twice or three times a year, they will return the composted material to him, but they'll just, it's a bin that he pays for that to collect. So it's available.
Right.
It's just, I don't know that it's feasible on a large scale for those companies.
Yeah, we used to do it back, I think, this 40 years ago. If anybody has one of those cast iron little flip-top things in their driveway, that used to be the pig farmer that would come around and pick up food scraps and bring it back to his pig farm. And that's kind of a whole other story, but this is sort of a return to that in a sense. The town typically did contract, and they did pay the pig farmer to come pick that up. And then they all got more money being waste haulers and transferred to that business. But
Well, I think it would be great if the two of you came to the next Conservation Commission meeting and just laid it out on the table, what you're doing and what you'd like to see. The whole thing with the windrows at Walker Farm is intriguing.
I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, sure.
So would you come to the next conservation meeting?
Yeah, we could talk compost for hours on end.
Great. I'll send the information to Ted Myatt, and we meet on this floor in one of those.
When's the next meeting?
That's a good question.
It's the second, I think it's the second Tuesday of the month.
That would be the 13th.
Okay, we already had,
August 13th?
yeah. August 13th?
That's where it is. 7:30 it is.
What day of the week is that?
Tuesday,
All right.
August 13th.
That'll work.
It's at
For me.
7:30,
Okay.
which is nice. At 7.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? So right now, the public can just bring vegetable waste to Walker Farm?
No, to the farm school.
Farm school.
To the farm school. There's a place.
Yeah, they have
time.
the farm stand, and to the left of the farm stand, they have a receptacle where the public can dispose of their organics.
But should be limited to fruits, vegetables.
Correct. At this point,
I apologize for
grounds,
whatever
eggs,
the
shells.
first time I was unaware.
No, that's okay. It can, that's the beauty of composting. It's very forgiving, so.
I mean, at that point, why would we hire Leo Pollock to do that?
Well, I think if we can capture our full spectrum of organics, I think that would be ideal.
But if we can,
And you get the people who don't want to go bring their things somewhere. They want somebody to come to them and take their things.
well, I think they at least have to take it to
Midpoint.
the recycling center. I mean, that would be, he said that they could pick up, they could put a couple of barrels at the recycling center where that would be a place that they could pick up. that should, I think it would be a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the composition of the ad hoc advisory athletic board, adding a member of the planning board. Who wanted this to be put on the agenda? I can't.
The planning board.
Planning board. Okay.
Wait, the planning board did, or the Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec wanted planning board.
Okay. Michelle, I couldn't be at the last, or not the last, but June Parks and Rec meeting. Can you tell us about their discussion and if you recall anything that they...
It's difficult to recall, my
Okay.
apologies, but I do remember they were discussing in some depth the ad hoc committee
Yeah.
for fields, and we have a representative from the planning board on the Park and Rec Commission, and in their discussions with him, they just felt that he had some valuable input into the fields, the development of fields in Barrington, where the town is headed. And I think they felt it would be of some value to have someone on the ad hoc committee.
Thanks.
So, the planning board, I think it's recently started having liaisons to the other committees like we have. This might be what they're referring to, rather than necessarily a voting member on the ad hoc committee, but...
They wanted a voting member?
They want a voting member on? Okay.
Well, I do remember that there was a lot of sort of negotiation about the size of that ad hoc committee. And we did have the planning board in initially, and then it was out to add members of the community. I can't remember where that was left.
Yeah, there was going to be 0 open members of the community.
I think the negotiation became at least resistance, which is just bring everyone in and, Mary, we need to book this room for our next meeting. I don't see it, I mean, I can tell you, I don't see any harm in it. I mean, it's a very unwieldy in terms of size. We broke it out into subcommittees for that reason. I mean, a discussion of any one thing with 17 or 18 people, it takes everyone, having 1 or 2 minutes of speaking time before you. But there's no harm, obviously. I think planning is an omission that probably was not a great idea to get that. It's not important now, so I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Okay.
It's a very big committee. I think there's a harm in continuing to grow it. And if Parks and Rec is making the recommendation that there be somebody from planning on the committee, perhaps it should be at the expense of one of the 3 Parks and Rec positions.
But that wasn't in the discussion.
I'm sure.
I was enjoying our athletic fields that night, so I don't know what to say. I'll make a motion to amend the composition of the Athletic Field Advisory Committee to include a member of the planning board.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
And no abstentions. Motion carries.
Yes, it sounds good.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the sexual harassment policy. This is Councilor Breyer's request.
So, I was contacted by a constituent who pointed out that, I think it's North Kingston? South Kingston. Recently amended its harassment policy to include public officials. And that's something, I looked at our policy, that's something I think is a good addition to a policy. I think both in terms of protecting elected and appointed officials, as well as obligating elected and appointed officials to abide the policy, protecting employees, volunteers, and elected and appointed officials. So I don't have currently proposed language for it, but I didn't really see any other changes. So it would, in that first paragraph, harassment of its employees, elected and appointed officials by anyone, including any supervisor, coworker, vendor, elected or appointed official. And then filter down to any other language that needs to change because of those changes. But I didn't see changes beyond that necessarily. Really just that.
So we should note that this would be, in terms of the town council, entirely aspirational, because there's only one provision in state law, which I'm aware, that can remove a town councilor, and that's the ethics commission. But otherwise, I suppose we could vote to, what did they just do to President Trump? We could have some vote that
Censure?
Censure, but it doesn't really have any teeth in terms of violations.
I'd have to look back at it, but I would call in our charter, actually, we're the judge of our own.
Yes, we are.
That's correct. That is our job.
I can't imagine it being a likely scenario, but I think we could probably vote to remove one another.
Actually, we can't.
Is that something that can't be done?
Definitely censure or...
You can remove if they're not, we're the judge of our own qualifications, which means, I suppose, if someone is not living in town.
Or gets convicted of a felony.
No,
No, then you can't
then they
vote.
would be moved,
Yeah.
I think. They would be moved to Cranston.
Yeah.
So,
If you want, I told Council Breyer, he needed to bring this up if he wanted to see such a change, because obviously only the council and the majority would have to agree. And then you could refer it to my office, maybe propose amendments that are done for this purpose. If that is
If I can make a recommendation, if you've read through our harassment policy, it's pretty specific to employees when it talks about what we can do to them that wouldn't necessarily apply to other people. It also has investigations by myself and the Human Resources Director. I mean, this policy is really focused on employees. So my recommendation would be to allow the Human Resource Director and myself to continue working our own harassment policy for employees, and that you create another duplicate similar that covers the other people, and it kind of bifurcates what actions we can take and what actions the other group would be taking against the other group, and allows us to drill down a little bit deeper on our employees, which I think is a more significant issue than what you're dealing with.
I think that makes sense to have, if we're going to do this. And I'm not opposed to it. I think, as I said, the most that could happen is a censure.
Well, for us, but along with all the other appointed officials.
And members of boards. You could remove that.
Yeah.
You would have the power in terms of members of committees and boards, you got the power to remove.
Yeah, that's one we
So if removing requires cause? Cause. And
Just cause.
Just cause is the standard. So by implementing this policy, without the policy, if there was an incident of harassment, would that be just cause?
You could, yes. This just clarifies it, what we did in South Kingston, if we had every board member sign the policy, so that they were well aware of it.
Yeah, and not that I've heard anything to the contrary, but it also makes the statement to all of the town employees that we're holding ourselves accountable to this standard. That all employees of the town are free to work in an environment free of harassment by us.
So would you...
Well, then let's see, to put something together if the council wants me to, for your consideration.
Why don't we do that, and we'll take a look at it, unless there's any objections. Okay. Great. Next item on the agenda is to discuss an act on the drug overdose prevention. This is Councilman Boyasha.
Yeah, I don't envision that we can actually get much done on this tonight, but something struck me, and you probably heard a few young people who graduated from Barrington passed away recently. It prompted me and a friend who grew up here with me. We were just having a conversation saying, wow, that's a surprising number. I sent 4 text messages to people of different classes, probably, say, 8 years apart from the youngest to the oldest. And I would hazard a guess that drug overdoses have killed more kids from Barrington than drunk driving accidents over the last 2 decades. We came up with, in a 10-year span, 15 kids from Barrington dead drug overdoses. So, looking at the list of kids, some of them, I don't know anything about, and I mean, I've known a lot of them, and total surprise. Some of them were not a total surprise. And I don't mean that they came from bad houses or had bad parents, but in hindsight, if you look at it, you would say, I saw something in high school about that person that I knew this could end up. And I don't think it had to end that way, but it did. And so I'm wondering if there's something that we're not doing that we could be doing. And I guess I'm looking to the Bay team to tell us in the next 30, 60, however long you think it takes. Are there places that have programs to identify, the at-risk kid? I expect, Chief, you must run into the same, call them the usual suspects, right? The same kids over and over again, they're getting into too much trouble. Are they seeing the same thing in the schools? Do their friends have a place to go where they don't have to risk getting their friend in trouble to say, I've noticed behaviors that are worrying me about this kid? Because when you look at a list of 15 kids and you realize, the reason I don't think we talked about it, if 2 kids who were in high school had overdosed 2 weeks ago, this community would be in the right? They were a few years out of high school, and it didn't happen in Barrington. And I think we ignore the fact that they were set on that track a long time before they were done, and it was probably while they were here.
The lucky ones are the ones who get in trouble because they get, hopefully they get that intervention. It's when and there may be, in some of those 15, there may have been some interventions along the way, but maybe not. Maybe that's something we're missing and we can do better.
Yeah, out of the 15, the worst of the stories that I heard, it was in the Providence Journal a couple of years ago, the resident of Barrington, he was a year older than me, developed a drug problem, had been in and out of treatment, and also in and out of jail. He was on probation. Parents noticed that he had sort of relapsed and tried to send him to Florida to go back to the treatment center where he had success, to have the Department of Corrections say if he leaves the state, he's going to violate probation and then put him in prison for 7 years. So he didn't leave, and he overdosed and was dead, I think, within a matter of weeks. So, we're not going to be able, obviously, to say we're going to solve the problem like that for the rest of their lives. I mean, we grew up in Barrington, there's no one that has support from the town. We're a small town, we can't do all that. But if you can identify any programs that anyone else is doing, what the resource requirements are, I think it's, we've done a lot of great work with drunk driving and vaping and everything like that. And I don't mean for a second that we need to give up on that, but this is the number of kids to me was just shocking to think that it's probably more than have died of drunk driving accidents. And we talk far more about that than we do anything else. So.
I think also added to that, which is information I just found out, and I don't know about you, but I've known people who have used heroin. I've known more people who have used cocaine, and I know lots of people who have smoked pot. And from my understanding, recent deaths have been cocaine that is laced with fentanyl. And when I told my son that, who's an EMT in the Springfield area, he said he's heard of marijuana that is laced with fentanyl, which says a lot about, acquiring your pot at a dispensary over, getting it off the street. But I think that added the idea that cocaine is lethal at this point. That's really scary. I mean, I think we are going to see numbers jump for that.
This stuff is so deadly. Our police have to protect themselves.
I know.
They have to wear gloves.
EMT workers have to be very careful about it.
I mean, I'm sure there have been more than this, but I remember reading about one police officer somewhere in the country who was killed just touching, trying to help somebody. So I think anything, if you can take some time. I know that you're working on this issue already, and fortunately you were able to get a pretty substantial grant on this particular issue. So we'd love to have you come back and let us know. Oh, if you've got something now, great.
Thank you.
Yeah. As she's on her way up, just this week they announced a series of grants that are going to be working directly on this in the East Bay, the community.
I think to your point, Steve, that I think the Bay team has done a great job focusing on our grade school, high school, middle school, and high school. But what really scares me is that these deaths are in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It's not the high schoolers.
No, and I think it would be a mistake to act as if there aren't adults in town.
Yeah.
Similar problems.
Right.
Involved. They might not
Right.
be turning up dead at the rate that we would find 20-somethings and 30-somethings. But, opioid abuse is not an elementary school, middle school.
Right.
Thank God. But it gets there.
So Denise Alves, Coalition Director for the Bay Team. I'm here with my colleague, Kristen Westmoreland, who is Outcomes Director, and we are also co-directing the East Bay Regional Coalition. So that includes Bristol, Warren, Barrington, and East Providence. So some of what we do is very local, and then more of what we do is regional that affects us locally. So I just handed you out a packet. We cannot discuss this in 9 o'clock at night. This isn't a problem we're going to solve tonight, you're right. But we did just, with this new funding, we have been working diligently on coming up with a fairly comprehensive plan. So this packet, the cover sheet, is kind of like the plan for the next 2 years. It certainly can be tweaked and massaged, but we had to start somewhere. Then you've got a couple of pages before of some data, some statistics, both on the overall, and then specifically the last page is actually some senior data, because we are seeing a lot with the opioids in seniors. So just to very quickly tell you this front cover sheet, the first yellow column, so I'm just going to look at the yellow. You can take time to look at the whole thing, but these are the kind of the key programming for the next couple of years. The first are what Mr. Breyer referred to as our community subgrants that were just awarded last week. This is through December 31st. That covers the first year of this grant because it started very late for us. It came from the state very late, and then there'll be a year 2 as well. We don't know after that what the grant funding will be, but there's a lot of grant funding that is going towards this issue for sure. And I would say that kind of going down this sub-grant list very quickly, the first one is a Barrington initiative, the deterra bags. The second one is regional, Bristol Recovery Support Center, but regionally affects Barrington. There may be people from Barrington that go to and use the recovery center support. The next block down, Barrington High School and Barrington Middle School are both local initiatives. The block down from that, Y Camp After School Behavioral Specialist, that's regional, but it does affect Barrington camps and Barrington after school programs done through the Y. The one after that, mental health training, is again a regional, but it is a Barrington resident who is creating a mental health training that would be around 3 hours, which is much more palatable than a much longer training that we have now. We just trained all of our safety, police and fire, on mental health first aid. That was a full 8-hour training, and we just finished that with our community overdose engagement grant. So, and then the bottom box, naloxone training, that's another Barrington local initiative. So as we're thinking of all of these initiatives, certainly they're not, some are more keyed in to certain age groups, the middle school, the high school, but then naloxone training, Deterra bags at all events. I mean, that is huge to get Deterra out to hopefully, many people in our community, so that they can dispose if they can't get to the, or won't go to the drop-off center at the Barrington Police Station. And then the second column is some of what we've already done in 2018 and what we're still continuing to do in this grant year. And then we've done some planning for year 2 already in the last column. So that is what we've been doing and are doing. We are always looking for input on what we might find out there, some initiatives that we can do locally. So we certainly are doing our best. This is a crisis that hit hard. It has hit Rhode Island hard, and we've got a lot going behind this.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Can you speak to that, the last box, RWU campaign?
Roger Williams University campaign. So we are going to try to work with Roger Williams and do some kind of programming. It's we have to work with them on it, so we don't know what it will really look like yet. But it will be about the whole cocaine fentanyl issue, because yes, the fentanyl is being laced in a lot of substances, and it's hitting.
That was news to me, not to say
it has not been news to us. We've had programs, we've had presentations from the Attorney General's office, and this has been happening for a while now. But on the other hand, you have to think of the opioid crisis has really, it's sort of like the vaping issue. It has exploded.
Right.
It has really exploded in the last couple of years. Not that we did not have it before, but in the last, 3 to 5 years, it has really exploded. So
I think just educating the public to this news, I think, is a first step.
Denise and I had a conversation last week, and something that I didn't realize is that cocaine cannot be fatal. You cannot overdose on cocaine.
Well, you can. It doesn't act the same way as like fentanyl does.
Right.
Like fentanyl is deadly right away, but a lot of people are recreational users of cocaine.
Which is my point being.
Right.
My point being that those 2 young men that lost their lives several weeks ago were participating in a non-fatal activity
they thought
until they had something laced with fentanyl.
Right. No, I think that's why it was news to me, and I think the general public is completely unaware of that.
Can you tell me what the fentanyl test strips that are mentioned?
So there has been produced an actual test strip that you can put in cocaine, and it will show if there is fentanyl. Now, of course, you have to remember, the way cocaine is used, there may be fentanyl in, depending on how it's broken up into lines, there may be fentanyl in part of it and not in another. So it's not a guarantee. And it's certainly, we have kind of been thrown into this. This prevention is our wheelhouse. We look back to, okay, what do we do, when they're younger? What do we do in middle school? What do we do in high school? What do we do? Prevention for us is way upstream. This is really, the harm reduction, the overdose prevention. And so we have kind of jumped into this feet first and learning about it all at the same time. So, but we do hope, it's a harm reduction. We're hoping that if you're going to purchase cocaine, and we've had conversations, well, what does somebody do if they're purchasing cocaine from a dealer and they have a test strip and they test it? What are they going to do? Are they going to go back to the dealer and say, oh, this is bad, I'm not taking this, give me my money back? Are they going to still use it and take the chance? There's no easy answers to this. It's certainly a crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the volunteer walk audit. This is Councilor Breyer.
Yes. So I'm able to discuss, I don't know what action is needed, but along with a group of volunteers, we'll be conducting a walk audit, which is, had been explained to me several months ago as it was an Eagle project that somebody in Troop 2 did to recruit several volunteers, and then they walked different routes to schools, kind of fully covering a certain area, the radius, the walking radius from the school, to take note of what's visibility like, what are the intersections like, what is the quality of the sidewalk, if there is sidewalk, and any hazards, any obstacles for somebody with an assistive device, things like that. And so the idea is to branch that out. It was done at all 4 of the elementary schools. So the idea here is to do it at the middle school and high school, and then also approaching kind of town center, the business area, and then perhaps the area around Police Cove Park and just beyond the bridges. We'll be meeting at Police Cove Park, and so I filled out the land use permit and asked for a waiver of the fee for this because it's for a community benefit. So is that the action that's needed?
No, I just asked that it be put on because it might be something that we would want to get behind.
Okay.
Usually if we have an issue.
Your fee is waived and there's no liability requirement.
Oh.
That's at all.
And also Paxton, who's here helping us with agendas tonight, he's one of the volunteers involved in helping organize this.
Great.
It's a very cool idea.
Great. Well, in terms of discuss and act, that seems like a good idea. We could vote to endorse this.
So it is August 24th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Well, we're also getting volunteer contributions of pizza to feed everybody after, and we'll check and maybe get some ice cream or something like that.
Great.
It's August when?
24th, Saturday the 24th.
At Police Cove? At
Police Cove Park.
Great. So do I hear a motion to endorse the volunteer walk audit?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great, the next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on bids, and the first series is from the Bay team. You're getting your steps.
I am. I should have one of those little things.
Yeah.
So Denise Sal's Coalition Director of the Bay Team, and as I spoke about jumping in feet first on all of this, we are required to and have decided to add some staffing. All of these, all three, and I don't know if we have to take each one separately, or if we can do...
We have to do them separately.
Okay, so, I don't know which one is on your list first.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have the agenda in front of me.
Okay.
We should. The first one is the Regional Prevention Assistant for administrative support to the East Bay Regional Coalition,
Okay.
Serenity Shield.
Yes, so Serenity would be supporting us. She's being paid completely, on all of these positions are completely grant funded. The alcohol grant, the opioid grant, and the tobacco grant fund this position. We found that we cannot manage. We've never had any administrative help before, and so we need it. We need it.
Okay. So, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to award the bid for a regional prevention assistant for administrative support to the East Bay Regional Coalition to Serenity Shield. Contract services will be in the amount of $20,732.
Second.
Made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so the next one is sub-grant coordinator to Laura Cook to manage the opioid overdose solution community grants.
So Laura is managing the part of the state opioid response grant, the big one that we have that is awarding all the sub-grants, the community grants. So we decided to split this position, this full-time required position, into part-time positions. So she is managing that side of the grant, strictly the community grants.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to award the bid. I'm actually reading something different, but award the bid for a SOR sub-grant coordinator to Laura Cook to manage the opioid overdose solution community grants as part of the 2-year state opioid response grant for the East Bay Regional Coalition. Contract services will be in the amount of $20,630.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And then the final one is for a PFS and SOR municipal coordinator.
Yes. So we, looking at the work needed for these grants, we decided that we needed somebody at the municipal level in each community to work on these grants with the grant coordinator. So this is working directly with the municipal coalitions for this position.
Okay.
On both of these grants, the PFS and SOR.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for PFS and SOR municipal coordinator at the municipal level to Barbara Palumbo for contracted services in the amount of $12,715.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item is from our town planner, who is not present. The understudy for town planner.
The adjunct
planner. For Police Cove Park Dock.
As you know, we've been looking to receive some money towards a transient dock at the boat ramp. It's really a safety issue, and most ramps do have a transient. So instead of pushing your boat in and off the trailer and then everyone having to jump into the bow, You can just back the boat up to a dock next to the ramp and load your cooler and your family on and go from there. So we did receive state funding for it. It's a 25% match. The total cost of the dock is $170,600. Our matching 25% is $42,671.25. We're asking for $29,000. That would cover the cost of the engineering, the permitting, and the construction phase services. The rest of the grant, the construction, will come from all the state money and some additional town money, but that's down the road. There'll be another request to the town council at that time. So the request is for $29,000. That includes an additional 10% contingency.
I'd just like to say that has been in the planning since we first talked about doing something at least making improvements at police code.
As I understand it, historically, when the 10-year bridge project was underworked by DOT, the boat ramp was supposed to be part of the payback for them using Police Cove as a laydown area. The contractor on the bridges was supposed to put the boat ramp in, and that was such an unsuccessful contract that this DOT just said, listen, we'll give you the money for the boat ramp. You guys contract it out, so we took the money, but we never got any money for the dock. It wasn't included in part of the deal. And so this is Phil's efforts to get the dock, and it's been a hard effort, but we finally got the money for it. So it's a great asset to go along with our splash pad at Police Cove.
Yes. I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to enter into an agreement with GAZ of Providence, Rhode Island to provide engineering services related to the design, permitting, and construction services of a transient dock at the Police Cove Park boat ramp at a cost of $29,000 to include an additional 10% contingency.
Can I just ask you to amend that? GZA is actually, the memo has a GAZ, but I noticed the engineer is GZA.
GZA.
Second.
Question, it says, this is language that I always wonder about. 29,000 to include an additional 10% contingency. Does that mean 29 plus? Or does it mean 29 which includes the 10% contingency?
I think it includes the 10% contingency. Kathy, do you have any idea?
No, I asked you that today.
You obviously didn't get the answer I asked for.
It doesn't say, doesn't it usually say,
It usually says like 29 to include the 10% for a total of.
yeah.
It says to include an additional 10% contingency.
Yeah, it does say additional.
So I guess it'd be another $2,900.
Okay. So the motion's been made, and is there a second? Second. Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next one is for two separate ones for police department. And until I read this, I was wondering, they were so close for two Ford Explorers, I thought one of them had an 8-track in it or something. Because there was an $80 difference.
Couple more test
Yeah,
drives.
this is our normal annual request to come out of the capital. We put the auto replacement account out of capital. A little different this year. And as you say, the $76 or whatever that is between the two vehicles. And it only came up, I have to actually credit Captain Harrington and Lieutenant Igo, who handle the vehicle maintenance and vehicle purchasing for us. The year 2020 is one of those years. It doesn't happen often with Ford. They usually keep the vehicles with the same specs. 2020 is the year that the specs on the cars are changing. So a lot of the savings for us is going to come in the transfer of equipment. So because in 2020 there'll be different specs on the vehicles, a lot of the cages, what we call the partition in the back, the light bar, and the center console that holds the radio and the siren box and things like that, all that cost is about $4,500 to $5,000. We're being told that all the transfer in the equipment will not be able to we brought over from our previous vehicle to the 2020 version. Currently, we have a vehicle, 2019, that we purchased last year that I'm actually driving now, that I got as a captain. It's not marked, but it's a patrol vehicle. Plastic seats and vinyl seats in the rear, and you can't get in and out of the car from the inside because there's no levers. It's set up for patrol. And there's a spotlight on it and other things. Well, Lieutenant Idle actually came to me and said, I think what we should do is take that car, put it into patrol. There's 8,000 miles on it currently. So it's like brand new, but all the transfer of equipment, which could be up to $4,500, will be a savings on the transfer. And we take this new car that's $80 left, and that would be not used in patrol. So that's the reason for that. Otherwise, we would just have the same bid for both cars, 31, the little higher bid to 33, 07160 for both, and we could still do that, but the transfer of equipment would not work, so we're going to spend another like I said, $2,500 to $4,000, and I say that range only because we're now learning that even though these vehicles aren't even in yet, they may be able to work with the light bar and a bracket that may adjust, but it's at least the partition in the back is definitely not going to work, and the center console, so you're looking at $2,500 to $2,700, and possibly the light bar, which would bring us up to $4,500. So that's where the savings is. Okay. But we can do either. We can order the two with the 33071, but then just spend more money in the transfer of equipment.
Okay.
That's.
Over the years, I've been a thorn in the chief's side by asking if there was a hybrid. And as a parting retirement gift to me, I was able to make a motion to purchase I believe it was, I don't think it was all electric, but it was a hybrid.
It's a gas, a hybrid, yes. I've done a lot of reading on it. Are they not available, or? We still didn't receive the one we approved, you approved, the council approved in January. Still, the hybrids are not ready. So we're waiting for our 2020 hybrid currently. So we have not gotten that. The hybrids are going to be great, I think, for police. It's not the electric cars that people think about. They just kind of power down when they're idling. In police work, there's a lot of idling. So I think I've done a lot of reading. I'm actually a driving instructor and an accident reconstructionist, and I think the hybrids are going to be awesome. Now that the $3,300, this bid that I show you here, they're $3,318 more for each 2020 police SUV hybrid. We didn't put it for it yet because we haven't seen it or used it yet. So, but it is an option. I don't know how long we'd have to wait, but each vehicle that you see here, you'd have to add $3,318 to the municipal.
In discussions with the chief, there were two concerns. First was the delay in the delivery of the hybrids, and we need the vehicles. And the second was we haven't had the opportunity, although everything appears to that they're going to be very successful, we want an opportunity to test one before we start investing in a fleet of hybrids. So I fully suspect that next year when we buy two cars, they'll both be hybrids because we'll have had one for a while and been able to test drive it.
I would agree.
Still waiting for that.
Unless we're still waiting for it.
And if the council feels the $3,318 is a cost savings over it, we'd have to figure out. And I've started, we could do that after we have the one, but to see how long it takes us to get back that $3,300 and fuel savings, and fuel would be the main thing.
One of my father's speeches that he gave frequently was never buy a car in the first model year of a change.
It's true.
We don't have a lot of choices. We need to get these cars every year, but with the change to a hybrid, we're all hopeful it would be great. But if it turns out that it's in the shop half the time or something.
That's actually been said to us from some of the dealers, that exact thing. So, and we're familiar with that. We've done that before, purchased in the first year, and they're in the in the mechanic shop continually. So that's our concern. So it wasn't mentioned here, but
My hybrid is still
Yeah.
excellent. Okay, it's too bad. I'll make a motion to award the bid for the purchase of one 2020 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor Utility SUV police vehicle to Tasca Automotive Group, Hartford, Connecticut, in the amount of $33,071.60.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the purchase of one 2020 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor Utility SUV police vehicle to Tasca Automotive Group, Hartford, Connecticut, in the amount of $32,994.80.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thanks, Jude. Next item on our agenda is to continue two matters for our next meeting, Do I need to open the public hearing?
No,
Okay.
don't, just continue.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to continue an ordinance amendment to Chapter 180, 2019-17, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 185 zoning to establish agricultural rural zoning until our September 9 meeting?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. The next item is to continue the ordinance 2019-18, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 185 zoning, Section 185-49, written requirements. Do I hear a motion to continue that to the September 9 meeting and advertise appropriately?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next ones are just introductions. First one is an introduction of an ordinance amendment to Chapter 134, Parks and Recreation. This is to allow, this is just the introduction, and at our next meeting we'll discuss the ordinance about allowing employees of the town to purchase beach passes. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion. To introduce 2019-19, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 134, Park and Recreation, Article 8, Barrington Beach, and schedule a public hearing for Monday, September 9th, 2019.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Want to make the next motion for solid waste polystyrene?
I sure do.
Okay.
Find it. I'll make a motion to introduce 2019-20, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 161, solid waste, Article 4, polystyrene, food service and packing materials, and to schedule a public hearing for Monday, September 9th, 2019.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to introduce 2019-21, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 144, public lands, use of town hall hours.
Second.
Set the council hearing for September 9th, 2019.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to introduce 2019-22, an ordinance amendment to Chapter
124.
What? This was 21, this is 22.
Yeah, it was one. It should be 21. You did it right.
Okay. To introduce 2019-22, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 124, licenses and permits, Article 8, mobile food establishments and to schedule a public hearing for Monday, September 9, 2019.
Made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
It's Roman numerals, you know.
The next item is to set our agenda. We've got a number of things already on there. Public hearings for agricultural, rural zone, all the public hearings for the ordinances that were just introduced, and for those two that were just continued. We're also going to have a discussion about Complete Streets, the program that Phil has been working on, and a discussion of short-term rentals.
That short-term rentals, as you know, those correspondence for tonight's meeting, there's been several problems throughout town. Now, Joy will tell you, as she told me, that finding Airbnbs around Barrington is a difficult thing. But there are some, and they've become problematic. And a couple months ago, based on a URI study, MPA program study, we made some recommendations about owner-occupied and the amount of time. And I think based on that correspondence, we may want to revisit that. Now, the EDC looked at it and they said, no, we don't need any changes. But I think they were looking at it, from afar.
The planning board did the same, but they're probably not receiving the complaints.
So I think it's worth a discussion as to whether we want to, the council wants to address it themselves. And we can put some small restrictions in that can kind of relieve some of the pressure where there are problems without being overly restrictive or, preventing people from utilizing their homes as Airbnbs.
Yeah, my sense from the Economic Development Committee was that there was discussion about the costs involved in sort of enforcing this. And I think that really depends on what your ordinances are. I mean, at the very least, I think it would make sense to have an ordinance that requires a posting, conspicuous place for anyone who's doing this of the local ordinances on noise or something like that. Very simple things that we can do that maybe will have some impact on this. So we can talk about that.
Couldn't Mike's office come up with some simple recommendations?
Yeah, Newport has a very involved ordinance. It also involves enforcement personnel, etc. It involves, Narragansett has one. It involves registration. But someone has to keep track of all of that. I hear, what I'll do, let me look into what's out there, see there's some options. I hear that you'd like something simple rather than involved.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else for the September 9th meeting?
There will be an opening on the Harbor Commission.
So there's an opening going to be on the Harbor Commission. Maybe we can post that on the website.
What do you mean, is there currently an opening and there will be an applicant? Or do you know that somebody's going to be leaving?
No, there is an opening. Brian Hunt, when he became harbor master, had to resign from the Harbor Commission.
Oh,
So I think we've already advertised it, haven't we, Mary? We just haven't gotten anyone in yet.
Okay, and of course, if there's anything else, just feel free to let me know and we can put it on the agenda. Do I hear a motion to move into executive session in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, collective bargaining, police local 351, memorandum of agreements, 42465A2, litigation, tax assessment appeals, opioid litigation, and potential litigation, and to discuss executive session minutes from June 3rd for placement on the town council agenda for September 9th. Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
We're going to go down to one of the boardrooms down the hall.